Alright. Your next performer is a writer, comedian, storyteller, and molecular biologist. He is the author of the book Surviving Your Stupid, Stupid Decision to Go to Grad School. Writes the monthly humor column Experimental Error in the AAAS publication Science Careers. And he hosts a web series for the Journal of Visualized Experiments called Ask Adam About Grad School. He's appeared on the Food Network's Food Detectives, the Science Channel's Head Rush, and the Travel Channel's Mysteries at the Kremlin. He currently co-hosts Superman Science on Discovery International and Outrageous Acts of Science on the Science Channel. Here to tell a true story about his scientific upbringing, please welcome Adam Ruben.
Thank you. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. And science. There it is. So they say that every science nerd has his day, and this was supposed to be our day. It's a day that we dreamed of as far back as 8th grade when they took us to the high school and they said, this is where you're going to go next year. And most of the kids, what they heard was, look, you're going to go to the football games and pep rallies and parties. But for a few of us, what we heard was, next year, you're going to get to take 9th grade introductory physical science with Mrs. Newsom, where for your final project, you will build a Rube Goldberg machine. Yes. For the maybe 2 or 3 of you who are unfamiliar with Rube Goldberg machines, it's a machine that uses vast complexity to accomplish a very simple task. And so a marble rolls down a ramp, and then it lands on a lever, and then it pushes something else up, and that cuts a knife. And it's like, you've seen them in cartoons, I'm sure. I've been obsessed with Rube Goldberg machines since I was little. I still remember the very first time I saw one, it just blew my mind. It was that breakfast machine scene in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Or maybe, and I'm hoping that maybe 1 or 2 people here will know what the hell I'm talking about. The kinetic sculpture in the lobby of the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. Seriously, more than 1 or... That's amazing. It's like a Rube Goldberg machine. I could stare at the thing for hours. I used to sit in class and doodle Rube Goldberg machines on the paper covers of my textbooks. It was just an obsession of mine. I dreamed that someday I would have to build a Rube Goldberg machine for some reason, and now I was going to have to build a Rube Goldberg machine. And so I started on this project like before Mrs. Newsom even passed out the assignment sheet. As soon as we knew it was coming, I assembled an elite team of science nerds to build our machine. It was me and Steve and Jared. And just to give you a sense of, you know Jared? Is Jared here?
I love Jared.
It's not Jared from Subway, it's another guy named Jared. There are many Jareds, I assure you. This is Jared from Delaware, I don't think you know him. But since you don't know him, just to give you a sense of who he was, I think Jared is best defined for me by the 6 words that he said to me when he was my seat partner on the marching band bus trip to Florida. And he woke up in the middle of the night from the floor where he'd been sleeping under the seat. And he looked up at me and he said, I have floss up my nose. And he did. He had dental floss hanging out of his nose. How it got there, I have no idea, especially how it got there while he slept. But it did, and he felt like sharing it. That's Jared. So Jared and Steve and I would go over to Jared's basement every day after school, and we'd build more pieces of Rube Goldberg machine. Because this is all we had. We weren't invited to the parties. We had time to work on the Rube Goldberg machine. And we decided we were not just going to build the best Rube Goldberg machine in the class. We decided we were going to build the best Rube Goldberg machine in history. So we were going to have this huge machine that was going to demonstrate 9 different natural disasters, which were, from beginning to end, an avalanche, Godzilla pushing over a building, the sinking of the Exxon Valdez, the San Francisco earthquake, the Great Chicago Fire, a flood, a volcano, the Tunguska meteorite, and then finally, the greatest natural disaster of them all, the 1993 Phillies, who had just lost the World Series thanks to the pitching of someone named Mitch Williams, and everybody in town was angry at him. So we, some of you are familiar with that too. You remember the Franklin Institute field trips as well, so there you go. So what we were going to do is we're going to have our classmate, this kid Pedram, he was going to represent Mitch Williams. He was going to put his chin down on the machine, and at the very final step on our machine, a mousetrap was going to spring a pie into his face. So we set to work building this thing, and we've been working on this machine for about 3 weeks. When Mrs. Newsom came up to me and she said, I know you guys have already started, and I hope you don't mind, but maybe you can take one more person into your group because Gina doesn't have anyone to work with. And we didn't really know Gina. She had actually just moved to our school from Vietnam. All we knew was that she seemed nice, she seemed smart, but would she have that same nerdy dedication to the project that Jared and Steve and I did? And it turned out Gina was very good. She was creative. She actually liked coming over to Jared's house and working with us on this. We didn't have to worry about Gina. We should have worried about Steve. Somehow, the Rube Goldberg project brought out Steve's inner pyromaniac. I must have been dormant in him for years, and then he realized that we had a machine with candles all over it, and I still remember him sitting there in Jared's driveway. He'd light a match and use it to light the rest of the pack of matches. Just want to go, and then toss it in the corner of the driveway. And then we're like, Steve, stop that. Come back down to the base and work on the machine. He's like, it's okay, guys. I bought a pack of 50. Like, that doesn't make it okay, Steve. So this whole time it was me and Jared and Gina fighting against Steve setting fires. We worked on this machine forever, and then finally the big night before, we bring everything from Jared's basement up into his garage. We reassemble it all, and we do our big final test run. And I remember exactly what happened during this because we videotaped it, and we learned at the time that not only was it our final test run, it was actually our first test run. Because we never tested the whole machine all together. When we had lots of extra time, we didn't use that time to make sure the whole machine worked in harmony. We would just build a piece, saw that it worked, and then use the time to go build more pieces. So what we had was this big sprawling machine that had just never been tested. And that bears out exactly as you'd expect in the video. Because it's just us standing around as things fall apart and catch on fire, and we're like, no, 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 no. And Jared is standing there going, it's not gonna work, you guys, it's not gonna work, it's not gonna work, you guys. And you can hear me running down the driveway in the middle of the night yelling, the adrenaline says it will. So the next morning, we get up at 6 a.m., we load everything into Jared's dad's truck, we get to school, and even though the test run went poorly, we are confident because this is our day. This is all we have, really. This is the only time the other kids in class are going to pay attention to us. So we roll into school like, have you ever seen one of those movies where they're trying to illustrate that a group of disparate people is a posse, and so they show them all walking in slow-mo? That's us, going into 9th grade that morning. And we roll in, we're like, we see all these other people with their machines. This is our machine. It has 6 steps. Well, this is our machine. It has 8 steps, and at the end it puts a letter in a mailbox. We're like, yeah. Our machine has 61 steps. Jared, Steve, bring it in. And they walk in carrying this massive piece of plywood with plastic and wood and glass and strings going everywhere all over it. And kids are like, oh my God, that's your machine? I'm like, oh, that's piece 1A. The rest is in the truck. And we set this machine up. It occupies a quarter of Mrs. Newsom's classroom. She lets everybody else run the machines first, and then they come to us. And kids are crowded around this thing. I mean, they're just packed. We hardly have room to set everything up. It is amazing to us. Because what we learned that day is that no matter how cool you think you are, nobody is as cool as a Rube Goldberg machine. Everybody is just watching, and we're getting things ready, and I have the honor of dropping that first marble. I drop the marble. It runs down a ramp, it lands in a cup which pulls a branch out, releasing the avalanche down the side of a mountain, which lands in the lever, which pushes down another lever, pushing up a lever, which knocks over the building for Godzilla. It also brings up a candle, which burns through a little piece of dental floss. Thank you, Jared. Releasing a fishing weight, which sinks the Exxon Valdez, but it burns through a second piece of dental floss, which reaches all the way across the board to let go of a piece of cardboard, which is on 2 rubber bands, and then it shakes like that, and that's the city of San Francisco, and that falls over. and then at the end of the piece of cardboard is a nail, and glued to the end of the nail is a little plastic cow, because Mrs. O'Leary's cow started the Great Chicago Fire, exactly, and the cow knocks over a lantern, which has 3 candles sticking out of a block of wood, and as that lantern is falling toward the city of Chicago, I flash back on something I said while we were setting up, and that is, you're in charge of the lighter fluid, Steve. The city of Chicago goes up in flames. It's this massive fireball that surely would have singed off the eyebrows of all of our classmates, except for the fact that Mrs. Newsom, the ever-vigilant 9th grade science teacher, had been standing there with her thumb on the fire extinguisher trigger. So as the flame comes up, she releases this giant cloud of thick, chalky yellow dust, which I've since learned is monoammonium sulfate. It's everywhere. All the kids who've been leaning down into the project, big faces, they're breathing it in, they're running around the classroom. Oh, I can't breathe, I can't see, I need water. Nobody has it worse than poor Pedram, who had his chin down on the machine, waiting for the pie. He never got the pie. It never came up, but monoammonium sulfate, that filled his lungs for a good week. Most of the class was coughing for a week afterwards. And a little part of me thought, you know what, that's what you get for not inviting us to the fucking parties. So finally the dust clears and the machine has stopped. Right before a dowel would have tipped a cup over and released the flood, and there's a little pile of potassium dichromate sitting there that would have been the volcano, but wasn't, and instead there's just this dust and this emptiness and silence. And even though Mrs. Newsom let us come back during her planning period to set up the second half of the machine and show her that it would have worked, and even though we all got grades that were like 15 points above the highest A+, the damage had been done, and I don't think anybody was looking forward to seeing our future science projects. I don't know where Gina is today. Jared has abandoned science in favor of the second nerdiest pursuit, clarinet. And Steve, the pyromaniac, is a surgeon. Absolutely true. And as for me, I'm still in science. I'm working on a malaria vaccine, a molecular biologist. I love what I do, and I love the fact that I'm making something and using science to solve a problem, hopefully, and that might even save lives. But I keep thinking about the fact that I've never had the same unbridled enthusiasm for my work now that I did for the Rube Goldberg project. And I was wondering, does that make me a bad scientist? Does that mean that I've lost that spark? But I don't think it has to. I think the Rube Goldberg project and that enthusiasm for going to Jared's house, it's just something that happens when you're 14 and you have so much time. Thank you.